Good morning, sir. This is Sudarshan Vasudevan, and this is my seminar for the course Management Economics on the topic inflation. Now, there are different ways in which inflation has been defined in the past. Mayor defines it as an increase in the prices that has occurred after full-time employment has reached. Crowther defines it as an inflation is a state in which the value of money is falling, that is, the prices are rising. Colburn defines it as too much money chasing few goods. Ultimately, inflation is when there's you know the value of currency it decreases, and as a result, price increases. That's ultimately what inflation is. Now there is a way to quantify this inflation is by finding the rate of inflation. Now, how can you find the rate of inflation is by using this method called cost price index. Now, this cost price index, what it does is it measures how it puts an index on a particular set of goods that are typically consumed by a consumer. And the way in which it can be done is by first selecting a base year and then selecting a basket for that year and then collecting data on that prices of that specific basket. So once you do that, you find the price index weight, average price index weight of that year. That will be your CPI. Now, this CPI of this year, you compare it to CPI of any other previous year, and you make the percentage difference that will give you the rate of inflation. Now, there are different types of inflation. First type is called creeping inflation, in which the rate of inflation it does not exceed the rate of production. Second type is called galloping inflation, where the rate of inflation exceeds it does exceed the rate of production, and because of this, is a lot of effects like money it loses the purchase power, and because of this, people don't hold as much money as they did before. Hyperinflation occurs when I this is the most common out there form of inflation where it's so random. The prices keep increasing like here and there, and it's because this currency loses value. This usually happens during the time of wars, and there's no particular pattern associated with why or like how inflation will increase or decrease. It just happens. An example that I cited here is that Germany after First World War and Hungary after Second World War. Similarly, there's open inflation where if there's an economic imbalance, it's usually accompanied with the price increase. Yeah. And the next form is called hidden inflation, which is kind of the opposite of hyperinflation, where government increases, puts strict rules to in order to curb inflation, but they actually backfire because we get ultimately affected. And the way we get affected is because the producers or the sellers are forced to not make profit, uh, are forced to not make profit, and hence they compromise on the quality of goods that they deliver. And because of this, they tend to sell uh, low quality goods at higher prices, ultimately affecting us, the consumers. Now, there are two different sides of inflation. First is the demand side inflation or demand pull inflation, where happens when the particular good and the demand for it increases to a good extent, where the supply is the same. Now, when the supply is here and the demand is here, to bridge this gap, the price gets increased and we get ultimately affected. This can, there are multiple cases where this can happen. This can happen when there's increase in the consumer spending. Generally, the overall, average spending that a consumer does it increases. When during festival times, when there are government policies in place that offer low interest rates. Now, these are the cases where this can happen, and this can be countered by implementing better fiscal policies and increasing the interest rates. Next is the cost push inflation or the supply side inflation, where there is an increase in the production itself, and that ultimately means there is the cost has to be made up somewhere else, and it's usually made from the price of the good. Now, this can cause due to increase in the price of the raw material, increase in wages or increase in like that's the tax that is being increased. That's normally not that much. And negative side of this is that it can decrease economic growth and increase unemployment. And in a psychological standpoint, consumers' confidence will decrease. Now, this can be, countered by having some technologies in place that can detect this before this happens, like forecasting mechanisms or some fancy technology that can predict or foreshadow that hey, this is going to happen. There's going to be an increase in raw material price, so that we can get ready and counter this inflation more effectively. And this brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.